Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and in this episode of Sonar Fishing, let's talk about Ned rigs. So the Ned rig is definitely one of those techniques that has really gained a lot of traction over the last, I'd say, 10 years. I remember in 2014 when we were first starting to film Sweetwater back in the day, me and my buddy Joey Nania, Z-Man just introduced the Ned rig and the Finesse TRD, this one right here, was what they introduced, along with the Finesse ShroomZ jig head that you see here. So this is the original. This is the original Ned rig setup that was introduced all those years ago. And ever since, it's become such a huge part of, you know, the bass fishing world. You know, it's just a tremendous tool for catching numbers of fish. And I've even caught as big as about a 9.5 pounder. I took a guide trip out, somebody actually that worked with the production company that I worked for with Sweetwater. I actually took her out on a guide trip with her boyfriend, or I can't remember, fiance or husband, I can't remember, but she ended up catching a 9.5 pound monster on this rig right here. I'm gonna put a picture right up here. It was a pretty cool catch. But you know, there's been a lot of tackle introductions for the Ned rig system over the years. Both Z-Man and other brands have come out with, you know, the different soft plastics and the different jig heads. But I'd have to say, you know, I know I'm a little bit biased, but Z-Man definitely has the best selection of Ned rig stuff. And overall, you know, the fact that Elastec is buoyant and super durable, it's just, their baits just tend to work the best, in my opinion. But, you know, I'll leave that up to you to decide. But I wanted to go through my full tackle setup for the basic Ned rig. Now you can get crazy, you can do a bunch of different you know, combinations of jig heads and different types of Ned rig baits. To me, when I fish a Ned rig, I love fishing the traditional just do nothing, you know, turd, the TRD. That's what I like to throw. Of course, you've got a lot of other different offerings. You've got different variations of this, you know, do nothing rig. You've also got some creature bait style ones like the TRD craws, TRD bugs, things like that. But in general, this is the one that I'm throwing if I'm saying I'm throwing a Ned rig. So first off, let's talk about the bait. So the bait that I'm going to be throwing, just like I just said, the Finesse TRD is kind of standard for me. So I'm usually going to be sticking with this. My favorite colors are a green pumpkin, yoga pants, green pumpkin goby, and also new money. Those are my four favorite bait or colors overall for the Ned rig. And then let's get into jig head selection. So check this box out. That is organization right there. That is a beautiful thing. We've got all different types of jig heads, but these are the ones that I really focus on in most situations. So I'll just pull one out at a time. So the original Finesse ShroomZ jig head is that one right there. We'll start with that. Okay. Finesse ShroomZ jig head, very light wire. It's got that little welded on, you know, keeper right there, that little barb, and that's got that mushroom style head. This is the original. This is the one that I like to use a lot for fishing for spots and smallmouth, because, you know, with light line, I like the fact that it's a light wire hook and a very sharp point. I feel like I get better hookup percentages at, you know, when I'm fishing deeper water and things like that. And it's more suited for like open water, clean bottom scenarios where you're not around a lot of cover, because it is a light wire and it will straighten out if you don't have your drag set right, you're using too heavy a tackle, or you're just fishing around too heavy of cover. So the Finesse ShroomZ jig head is definitely one that I still use a lot nowadays. The next one that we've got has become my favorite for fishing around, you know, light cover, moderate cover, you know, in situations where I'm fishing for bigger fish on average, you know, maybe largemouth. This hook right here, this is the HD NetLocks or NetLocks HD jig head. Sorry, I had a brain fart there. But yeah, this is the NetLocks HD. This one right here, it's a little bit different as far as the keeper. You got, instead of a barb, you've got that lead welded on kind of barb there that keeps your Elastec or plastic secure. Similar style, you know, mushroom head. It's a little bit more flat topped than the Finesse Shrooms, but the hook is what's really different. That is it doesn't look like it, but that's a much stronger hook overall. So it's got a heavier gauge wire. It can handle bigger fish. It can handle heavier tackle, a little bit, you know, stronger drag, and you can also fish it around grass. So if I'm fishing around cover or casting the Ned rig around cover and maybe kind of a Texas rigging that bait, so it's a weedless presentation, I like the NetLocks HD a lot for that. The next one is the Pro Shrooms. So the Pro Shrooms is kind of a mix between the NetLocks HD and the original Finesse Shrooms jig head. So looks like the Finesse Shrooms jig head has the same welded on barb. It's got the same type of head. However, it's got a stronger hook. So it's a much stronger hook than the Finesse Shrooms. It's very similar to the NetLocks HD, but it does have a bigger hook overall. So it's got a wider gap in general. So this one honestly is the hook that I like to use with some of those other creature baits like the TRD bugs and you know, other Ned rigs like that. You can use it with the Finesse TRD. I generally tend to like the NetLocks HD and the regular Finesse Shrooms better for the TRD. I think it just fits better. The hook is you know, the hooks in those jig heads aren't as, like, you know, apparent, but this one's actually a pretty wide gap, so you see it pretty good. But it is still a really good jig head. A lot of people prefer it to the other jig heads for the Ned rig because it's so much stronger. I mean, you could throw it on you know, bait casting gear and 12-pound test and not straighten out this hook. It's a pretty strong hook. All right, and the next one that I want to share with you guys is the football Neds. So this one right here is a pretty new one. It's got a similar, you know, gauge hook to like the Pro Shrooms or the, I think it's closer to like the NetLocks HD. It's got that little barb on there, but it's got a football shaped head. And where that's going to excel is when you're trying to fish a bait and maintain contact with the bottom at all times. Maybe you're dragging it, you know, doing like kind of a sidearm drag over, you know, clean bottom, shell beds or something like that. And I like to use it with like smaller, more creature style baits than the Finesse TRD. I like to use like a baby goat or a TRD bugs, TRD hogs, all those different baits that have those appendages that really look like, you know, a crawfish or some other creature dragging on the bottom. So, you know, it's kind of like a finesse football jig presentation is what I like to use the football Neds for. So that's another one that I like to use, but it's more for those creature style Ned rig baits. All right, so those are the primary Ned rig jig heads that I use on a regular basis. Now let's get into the tackle. I think that's really important because, you know, using the Ned rig, you want to use tackle that is you know, light enough where you're not gonna risk straightening out those hooks. And also, you know, this is a finesse presentation. You wanna use light line and light gear overall. That's one of the attractions of, you know, the Ned rig. So I've got the setup right here. I've actually got a Ned Mickey rig on here, little Streaks 3.75 and the Finesse Eyes jig head. But this is the same exact setup that I use for my Ned rigs too. So the rod that I use, this right here is the Fitzgerald Fishing Versa Series 610 spinning rod. So this is a 610 medium heavy spinning rod. Usually, you know, for real finesse techniques, I would use like a medium, but I love this medium heavy rod because it does feel very light when I'm fishing it, it does feel like a medium, but it's got a little bit extra backbone, and I feel like it's a very sensitive rod, and it's not too whippy. I really want a rod that isn't going to overpower the bait and risk straightening out that hook. But I also want a rod that has that extra added sensitivity to it. And this 610 medium heavy just does the trick. It doesn't feel like it's overpowering it at all. So I love this 610. This is what I use for all those different jig heads. I've had no issues at all using a medium heavy with all of those. But that being said, you can find a comparable Ned rig rod, anywhere in that 6.5 to 7 foot medium action range. Most companies will make a rod that's a medium action in that 6.5 to 7 foot range that is going to be perfect. But spinning gear is pretty important for a Ned rig overall, unless you like using those finesse bait systems, whatever they call them, where you're using bait casting gear to cast out light baits. For me, I love fishing this type of bait on a spinning setup. So as far as the reel goes, you can pick whatever reel you want. I like to use a Stunner S4000. That's the size that I really like for bass fishing because it has a deeper spool. You can use a smaller spooled spinning reel. The S3000 will work just fine. Of course, you can use one on like the 2500 size. That's really up to you. As far as line goes, I use 20-pound test mainline braid. This is Seaguar Smackdown Flash Green, and I like to tie a 6 or 8-pound test gold label leader. So I'll do like probably about 20 to 25 foot, a gold label leader. Really, you don't need any more than 8-pound test for the Ned rig. 6 and 8-pound test is perfect. I usually tend to lean towards 8 with gold label because it's about the same diameter as 6-pound test in other brands. So I don't really need to downsize that much. But 6 and 8-pound test tends to be kind of the sweet spot for the Ned rig. But overall, I think that pretty much covers it. That is the setup that I use for all these different Ned rigs, but I definitely wanted to dive into the different jig head designs and also talk about some of the different Ned rig plastics that I use with those jig heads. But anyways, guys, the Ned rig is here to stay. It's gonna be catching a ton of fish and also get some big bites for many years to come. I think that the Ned rig is not going anywhere. But overall, let me know what you think about my choices as far as my tackle selection. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'd like to hear your opinions below in the comment section. And all of these products that I mentioned in this video are going to be available at 44tackle.com for the most part. And if they are available at 44tackle.com, I'm going to provide links in the description. And if you use those links to make a purchase, you get 10% off your order, and I get a little bit of a kickback to support the channel of Sonar Fishing. So thank you guys very much. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. I'll see you out on the water.